As usual, this is broadcast live via the County Council's website and is also archived so you can view it afterwards. It's particularly important today that we remember to switch our microphones on and off, as a lady here today with us who's hard of hearing and is using the loop, so if we don't have the microphones on, she won't be able to hear us. So the next agenda item is apologies for absence, and we have none. I've agreed to change the order of business today. I propose to vary the order of business to consider the report regarding Care Online first on the agenda, as we have people with a particular interest in that item here today. So is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, so first one is just the minutes. I move the minutes of the meeting held on June the 12th, 2018 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Urgent items. I've also agreed to accept an urgent item concerning the East Midlands Strategic Alliance and a unitary structure for Leicestershire. The item is urgent because my announcement about it was made after the agenda for this meeting was published, and we need to provide some clarification about the timetable before the next Cabinet meeting in September. If members are in agreement, I suggest we take this item at the end of the agenda. So are you all happy with that? Yeah. Super. Declarations of interest, I think we have two. Pam first.
I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 12, which is the north and east section of Melton Mowbray Distributor Road proposals. As I am a member of Melton Borough Council, I'll still take part in the debate and vote on it, but I just wanted to declare my personal interest.
Thank you, Pam. Byron?
Yes, Chairman. It's my declaration is the same as Mrs. Posnett's. I'm a member of Melton Borough Council, and of course I've been deeply involved in the work around that project. Okay,
thank you. So if we go to Care Online, this is on pages 55 to 62, and there are a whole bunch of appendices on pages 283 to 330. This report advises Cabinet on the outcome of the consultation regarding the proposal to decommission the Care Online service and seek to approval to proceed with this, along with measures to mitigate the effect on service users, some of which are here today. The Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered this on the 6th of June, and a draft minute is attached to the Cabinet paper report as Appendix A, along with representations received at that meeting. We've also had comments from Alberto Costa, MP, a copy of which is attached to your order paper mark 8. As a special exemption, I've agreed that Kay Louis, one of the service users, can speak briefly on this matter first, after which John Wilson, the Director of Adults and Communities, will present his report. So, Kay, as I explained to you on the phone, it is an exception because I understand you can't email very well, but it's good of you to come along. So 2 minutes-ish, if you know what I mean, Kay. If you go on too long, I'll have to say you've done too much. Yeah. Okay, Kay, over to you.
Thank you. I'm a user of Care Online. As you know, you probably know an awful lot about it. It's been going for 17 years. Very highly skilled specialist people, both training and IT specialists. They visit people in their own home, and they visited over 3,000 people. They do bespoke packages. They go in to see people with very challenging, complex medical conditions and disabilities, and they install training, support and software to help them live a better life. They're not just shopping online, they can live their whole life through using computers. They have life-limiting situations and very isolated and often not members of the community. There's a priest with motor neurons disease. He dictates his sermons thanks to Care Online. As his condition deteriorates and he loses his voice, smart nav systems using his head will be able to be speaking for him. He'll lose when he's deteriorating. Learning disability 40-year-old children who get very violent when their computer goes wrong are helped by Care Online and kept active. A teacher goes blind with Care Online. She's able to return to work, she can carry on with charity work, and she's gained an MBE. Ruth, the lady behind me, deaf and blind. She devotes herself, thanks to Care Online, to charity work. She's the chair of Sense, active member of the church, and a pillar of community. A lady that only can move her eyes can now read books and surf the internet. Brain-injured people like myself can relearn and carry on with their lives. Stroke and dementia people get regular support. Care Online gives people skills that helps them take part in society, build self-worth and self-esteem. Care Online works with social care services team. They know each situation they walk into and what help the people will need and keeping themselves as they work on their own safe. Charities are individual niche. Very limited support, small amount of specialist support, visits once or twice a year, not consistent backup. With Care Online, health may deteriorate, more social care may be needed, residential care perhaps. If people aren't supported just by using the computer and gaining a better life, their health conditions and needs from the council may increase dramatically. You're all aware of the costs of residential funding. £10 a week, £10 a month, that's all it costs for the users of Care Online. Funding may be from the housing development. There's lots of housing development that give community funding. Maybe that could fund it. It wouldn't impose, and I know a lot of funding was given back to the housing development because it wasn't used. Care Online helps all people of all ages with terrible health problems and disabilities. It gives them a lifeline. Please don't cut this service.
Okay, thank you very much, and you've certainly done your work. You've been burning down the phone lines, lobbying people, so nobody could have done. Indeed. Okay, Kate, can you sit back down now so we can get the director up? But thanks for your input. You've certainly worked hard on it. John? Okay, for the record, John Wilson is the director who's going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. The Community and Wellbeing Service has a net budget of approximately £5.3 million, but within the Council's MTFS over the next 2 years this will reduce to £4.3 million. And a reduction of that magnitude means that we have to make some very difficult decisions in terms of our service delivery. Care Online is a non-statutory service provided within the Communities and Wellbeing portfolio. It provides training, ICT equipment, telephone support to enable people to access IT and digital independence. There are approximately 350 people use the service each year, of whom about 100 people are new referrals. The service is currently visiting 48 people. And in 2017-18, just over 200 people used the telephone support line. A high-level review of the service in 2017 concluded that the service was not viable given the funding pressures facing the Communities and Wellbeing Services, and on the 15th of September, Cabinet agreed to the development of proposals to decommission the service. Following which, a high-levels option appraisal was undertaken to consider 3 options. The first was to outsource the service to a different provider. The second was to transform the service and align it to another county council service. And the third was to decommission the service. In considering outsourcing, it was considered that the financial requirement couldn't be met because any other provider would require the same level of funding that is currently being provided through the Care Online service. We did consider whether the Care Online service could be accommodated within other council services such as adult social care, but again it would require the full funding element to be transferred to that service. Therefore, decommissioning the service was the preferred option in order to meet the financial requirement. In looking at decommissioning, we've looked at what other organisations can provide in the community. And although none of those other organisations that we have identified provide the same service that Care Online provides, they do offer an alternative provision. The detail of each of those providers is within Appendix B at page 293 of today's papers. Consultation on the proposals to decommission were taken forward between the 11th of April and the 22nd of May of this year. And the consultation was supported with emails to all active and ongoing service users, an accessible online questionnaire, accessible through screen readers, printed copies with large print and easy read formats, a free post address for people to respond to, and a dedicated email to enable service users to request additional help should they require it. A copy of the supporting questionnaire and information for the consultation is attached at Appendix B of the report, and the outcomes of that consultation are at Appendix C. In summary, 119 people responded to the survey. The Council has also received 2 petitions, an online petition of 61 signatures and a paper-based petition of 51 signatures, both asking the Council not to decommission the service. Individual responses were received as part of the consultation, and a summary of those responses is within paragraph 24 of the report. In addition, as the leader commented earlier, the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered the proposed decommissioning of the service on the 5th of June, and the minutes and representations received are attached to Appendix A. Members commented on the need for continuity support and asked that further consideration be given to what other organisations could provide if decommissioning was progressed, but in particular the need for ongoing support was mentioned over a longer period. Officers also discussed the proposals with the Equalities Challenge Group on the 8th of June. The group welcomed the efforts that we'd made to consult with service users and broadly supported the mitigation that we were seeking to put in place. The group did note, however, the concerns that service users may need to contact several providers to get the same level of support offered by Care Online. And the feedback from that group has helped form the EHRIA, which is attached to Appendix D. In taking the proposals forward, careful consideration has been given to the views of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Equalities Challenge Group. And we've developed the mitigating actions as a consequence of those conversations. We proposed developing a detailed transition arrangement so that all users of Care Online, both those currently active and those who've used the service recently, can have a transition to other alternative services where they're possible. We'll continue to support eligible people who are eligible for social care to receive the digital services that they need through their adult social care personal budgets. We'll signpost new referrals to alternative providers identified through the County Council. We'll support those alternative providers with a transitional fund, £10,000 per annum over the next 2 years to help those organisations develop their service offer in supporting people. And we'll provide people with advice about other funding sources that might be available. Where service users have borrowed IT hardware or software from the Council, we'll look at every opportunity to allow them to keep that hardware and software. And we'll use the County Council's network of local area coordinators to support people in their communities, both in terms of their digital inclusion but also their social inclusion. We do recognise that Care Online has been a highly valued service for those people who have benefited from it. We do also recognise that it's been operated over a number of years by committed experience and expertise through the staff group. However, given the funding pressures that we face as a council, we don't feel it's viable to continue with the service in its current form. I would reiterate that anybody who has complex needs, anybody who is eligible for social care services, can have their digital inclusion needs met as part of the wellbeing offer through the County Council's Adult Social Care Department. Subject to Cabinet approval, we are therefore recommending that the service be decommissioned. Should that be agreed, all new referrals to the service will cease, and we will end the support through transitional arrangements for the current service users by December of this year. Thank you.
For the record, I now call Richard Blunt, who's the Cabinet Member with responsibility. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you know that I address you today with a heavy heart that this item is before us. This is, well, I've had some difficult issues to deal with since I took on this portfolio, and this is up there with them. I have to say that I have huge amounts of praise and share many of the things that Kay said in her speech to us. She praised the subject, praised the service, praised the people individually who helped, and also told the individual stories of what this service has provided till now. And I don't think a single person in this room would question that, officer or general public or members. It is an amazing service. It's highly regarded, and I think it has been shown by all the people who've written to us, and indeed the people who are here today. The director has told us about the background. It's so difficult to talk about 5 million, 3 million there, and then £100,000. The way that the council approach the unprecedented financial pressure is for each department to take its fair share of make those savings. And when you go down from a figure of 5.3 to 4.3, every single pound that you take off adversely changes the service that we provide out there because it's different. The scrutiny meeting on the 6th of June, as John has gone through, was very, very helpful, because what it showed is there seemed to be a perceived gap between the service that we offer and the service that might be offered in the future. And there was quite a lot of uncertainty that was actually came back in the consultation document about people not knowing what other services were there. So you heard the mitigation, which has been listed on page 59. I think the key part of it for me is 31C, which is signposting to other bodies such as Enrich, AbilityNet, Choices Framework, Voluntary Action Southwest. I think absolutely, and I have to say I agree with Kay, none of those people listed here today can step in and do the job that is presently done by Leicestershire County Council. That is a fact, and if I said that, I would be lying. What the proposal before us today is to challenge our officers, and indeed me as portfolio holder, is to work with those charities and use the extra money that we're putting in to help them build up their services. Now, I have talked to some of those charities who are doing work to possibly improve their offer to help. It is completely outside of my remit to tell you what they're doing or what they might do, but it is very important for me that if we go ahead with recommendations today, that those people are helped as much as possible by this authority to step in for each person, because each person will have different needs depending on where they live, depending on their conditions as well. So I am very afraid to say that with a heavy heart I have to move the recommendations on page 3 of the order paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, I'm going to second the motion, not because it's something we want to do, but as Richard pointed out, we are in unknown territory with unprecedented financial pressure, and it's only going to get worse as we move forward. I thank you for the hard work you've done, Rich, in particular with going out and meeting people and listening to people and promising to try to help going forward. I thank the lady who phoned my wife for an hour, me for half an hour, and has phoned, as far as I'm aware, every single cabinet member, so well done. But unfortunately, I will have to second the motion. Louise?
I'd just like to say I came, when I read the papers, I was concerned about the gap that was perceived. I know it's been a very difficult time for Richard and the officers, but having had a briefing this morning, I am very, I'm happy with the fact that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes with all the different charity organisations, and the fact that people who are on adult social care plans will still have their needs addressed, and that the digital equipment is not going to be removed from other people. So it is with a heavy heart. We don't like to do this. None of us around this table want this to happen, really, but we are trying to make provision for those that are really in need. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Louise. Any other speakers? Okay, we'll have to put it to the vote. Moved by Rich, seconded by me. All in favour? Thank you. That's passed. We now move on to yet another difficult area. This report is about our proposal for a new integrated family health, family wellbeing service that will include reducing the number of children's centres and redesigning various elements of our early help services. Again, families and children overview and scrutiny considered this on Wednesday, and a draft minute is attached to your order paper marked 4A. Comments have been received from Dr. Matthew O'Callaghan, a copy of which is attached to this order paper marked 4B. I'll now call Paul Meredith, Director of Children and Family Services, to present the report. Then after that, I'll be calling Ivan Old, who's the Cabinet Lead Member with responsibility. Over to you, Paul.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just do a brief introduction and then Jane's going to take you through the detail of the report. As you say, Leader, this is another difficult issue for the Council to address, and something that we also approach with a very heavy heart, that we don't want to see some of these changes going through. Having said that, there are things to celebrate in this paper. I think that's important to recognise. The service we're talking about, an integrated service, is cutting edge and will allow us to deliver improvements to families. We've no doubt about that whatsoever. The other element is that, having gone through the consultation, it was a genuine consultation, we have reviewed some of the centres and made some adjustments, and there will be additional centres that we will be keeping open. The third element, I think, to celebrate is that the Council has found some additional money to make available to us, and that means that some of the cuts that we were having to make in relation to the reduction of the Troubled Families programme can be delayed for a period of time. Hopefully this will give time for the government to see sense on this programme and maybe bring forward a new programme that would mean in future we wouldn't have to make these cuts. So those were the points I wanted to make, and I'll hand over to Jane now.
Congratulations, Jane, on your new appointment. I think it's the first time you've been here since you are appointed. I suppose you're carrying on with your present job till Paul leaves, is that right?
Yes, I am, Leader, due to start the new role on the 1st of October. Thank you. So, as Paul set out, this report sets out the proposals that we're bringing to you in relation to the early help review. It also sets out the results of the public consultation and the changes made as a result of those consultation feedback and the proposed revised delivery model. You'll see in paragraph 3 that it's recommended that the results of the public consultation are noted. The number of children's centres is reduced from 36 to 18, and that the Director be authorised to develop and implement the new family wellbeing service model, including the remodelling of the buildings going forward. If I can take you to paragraph 15 on page 15, you'll note that the resource implications associated with the early help review. So the medium-term financial strategy requires a saving of 1.5 million by 2019-20. And alongside this, it is expected that the Ministry of Housing and Local Government and partner contributions associated with SLF will cease after 2019-20, and this will leave a funding gap of a further 2.3 million. In January 2018, it was agreed that the County Council would provide an additional 2 million to support frontline services through an increase in council tax. And this money, coupled with the improved payment by results income, postpones the requirement for the department to meet the 2.3 savings until November 2020. So the proposals that are set out in this report set out plans to meet the 1.5 MTFS savings. If I can take you to paragraph 17, page 17, paragraphs 21 to 23, we've set out the background around the 4 existing early help services, how they're managed and where they're delivered from. In relation to the consultation, in January this year, Cabinet agreed to consult on the proposals to integrate the 4 current early help services into a single 0 to 19 family wellbeing service, and also to reduce the number of centres from 40 to 15. And page 8 lists those proposals that we went out to consult on. The consultation ran from the 22nd of January to the 22nd of April, and we received 794 responses to the survey, over half of which were from early help service users. Full details of the consultation responses and summary of the consultation information events is included in the appendices. In general, the majority of the respondents were in favour of the integrated family wellbeing service approach. However, many respondents did make it clear that they didn't support the proposals to close our centres, were concerned about the future locations of some of the centres and also the accessibility. The events also included comments about the importance of volunteers in the delivery of early intervention. Alongside the consultation, we did also receive a number of petitions, and we've detailed those at paragraph 37. So in considering which buildings we wanted to retain going forward, we did develop a really clear set of rationale, and this rationale remained unchanged through the consultation. So in relation to the proposals going forward, the rationale for the retention of buildings is around the location, suitability, accessibility, how buildings are currently used, and the practicalities associated with buildings. So taking account of the consultation responses and other further work that was done, the proposal to Cabinet is to continue to move towards an integrated model of service delivery and to now retain 21 family wellbeing centres in the future. Paragraph 40 sets out those new proposals for the buildings. The changes from the original proposal are the addition of the Edge in Melton, Shelthorpe in Loughborough, Bagworth, Broughton Ashley, Moira, Braunston and Barwell, and the removal of Shepshed. We've undertaken analysis of each of the buildings, their current usage, and set out the rationale for the proposal for each building. The proposed new service model going forward would integrate our 4 existing services together into a family wellbeing service and provide a core offer for vulnerable children, young people and their families. In relation to staff in early help, all will be affected to some extent by the new service model. However, as a result of the additional monies and building reductions, the number of staff reductions is significantly reduced. So to conclude, the new integrated model will ensure that our services continue to be targeted at those most at need and deliver a whole family approach to our vulnerable families. Thank you.
Just before I call Ivan, when myself, Byron and Pam were at the LGA this week, and there was plenty of questions on the floor to Rishi Sunak about this, because obviously we're doing okay because we actually put 2 million of our own money in, but he was made aware, obviously, by November 2020, we'll have nothing. We'll have to shut the whole lot. But he did say here, and he actually said he's aware of the good work we've done, and he does support the Troubled Families agenda, but he wants evidence of where it has worked successfully. So if we can write into him, because I think if we, this preventative work is so important, but if we haven't got money, we won't be able to do it. So I think we should take up the invitation to write to Rishi personally, because as far as I'm aware, and Ivan will confirm, we've been one of the best authorities at this preventative work in the whole country. Can I call Ivan now, please?
Thank you, Leader. And in moving the motion on the Green Order paper, I will echo the view that I'm bringing a paper to Cabinet this afternoon that I don't like bringing. I haven't got any Cabinet colleagues who argue with the fact that early intervention cuts costs at a later date. And it's a problem for us that down in Whitehall, they don't appear either to understand or to be willing to recognise that fact and to do something about it. We have listened. I went out to the consultation meetings. Just to remind Cabinet of 1 or 2 facts about consultation. The end of last year, you took £100,000 away from residential work at Maplewell Hall School, and there was a response of over 10,000 signatures to the petition. By comparison, the number of signatures today is around about 5,000, and at the consultation meetings that I went to and that Trevor Pendleton also went to on my behalf for one that I couldn't get to, the number of people showing an interest from the locality ranged from Market Harborough, where no one turned up, to 30 in Loughborough. And I would say that the Loughborough one was probably more motivated politically than I had experienced at the other meetings. Those who came, who were volunteers, argued a very strong case. And I listened to what they had to say. Officers listened to what they had to say. And that is reflected on page 22, with the increase in centres from 15 to 21. I've read a comment, apparently, well, if we could do that, why couldn't we keep all of them open? And I make no secret of the fact that if I have to come back again in the future, it will probably be to say we have to close them all, unless our financial position markedly improves. When these were set up in 2006 by the then Labour government, I do think there was an omission. The omission was that these were not compulsory to go to. And so at the Hinckley consultation meeting, for instance, the head of a primary school relayed the fact that she'd got a 5-year-old who'd come in not even toilet trained. And in national press within the last 3 weeks, there has been growing comment about the number of children who cannot speak properly because their parents are too busy on their mobile phones and their game players. I do think at a national level, something needs to be done in terms of saying all children should attend. The government is paying for the 30 hours. But I'm excited, against all this gloom, by this family wellbeing service 0 to 19. And I think our officers should be praised for the constructive thinking that they've put in. It would have been easy to have said, right, we carry on with 4 separate services, we carry on with duplication, we won't think in any creative way, but that isn't the Leicestershire way. And so we now have a proposal in front of us for a service 0 to 19 that reduces duplication, in fact eliminates it, and which contains some services that have brought great credit on this council, Youth Offending Service being one of them, Supporting Leicestershire Families Service being another, and I think shows credit on the officers for the work that they have carried out. At one of the consultation meetings, I was a little bit critical, and I was taken to task for basically saying, I haven't got any confidence in this. Well, that wasn't the case at all. What I was actually trying to say was that if children are arriving at 5 at school, unable to learn, unable to speak, and not even toilet trained, there is a core of people out there who should have been taking advantage of this, who weren't taking advantage of it. Quite pleased with this family wellbeing service, 0 to 19. I think that the encouragement that we can give with such a service may help to reduce those young people in the future, and I would commend the report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Ivan. Pam?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to start off by saying that I've been contacted by Dr. Matthew O'Callaghan, who I know has commented, and it's in one of our reports here. I do share, and I've always shared, some of Matthew's concerns, that the concern about proposing to close one centre in Melton called the Cove in favour of using Venture House on Asfordby Road. Mainly the concerns about that he felt it's in the wrong place, it's on the wrong side of a very busy road, right on the edge of the ward which it's supposed to serve. He lives on the road, so he knows how busy it is. And it's surrounded by, the area is surrounded by a population who is ageing. The other centre, the Cove, was right in the centre of the community, which most needs its services. And Venture House also used to be the main youth centre in the area, but this was abandoned as young people just did not want to use it. I've noted Matthew's concerns, and as I said, I have shared those concerns with, I've had a share of those concerns. But I'm pleased to see that the report we've got bears no relation to the initial proposals. Leicestershire County Council has listened to and responded to residents who have raised legitimate concerns. And this paper also ensures an ongoing presence in Melton. And probably one of the reasons for that is that when it was the consultation, the only people that turned up to that consultation were people who represented the edge. And that is what is being kept open in Melton. And I do welcome the Family Wellbeing Service. I think it's really, really important. So given all of my statements, I'm happy to second this proposal.
Thank you. I've got 3 speakers. The first one's Byron.
Yes, I've always been very, very keen on this aspect of our service delivery, and especially the Supporting Families programme. Some years ago, I was a lead member for community safety, and it was introduced during that time. Pioneered actually in Melton Mowbray, but then spread through the whole county and across the country. I even spoke on the subject of what it would deliver and was delivering at the Conservative Party conference, and that speech was warmly received. Not surprising, therefore, that we have ministers like Rishi Sunak who I have a high regard for, who actually believes it's the right service to maintain. The pressures on our budget, of course, mean that now we have to curtail it, although we're saving quite a lot of the money by taking that service and putting it in with other services and making more comprehensive 0 to 19 service, which actually I think is will ultimately be an improvement on what we had before. The loss, of course, at this stage in this saving we're proposing to make today, is of a number of buildings, half the buildings, in fact, half the children's centres. And the children's centres are the area that's kept open. Now, a lot of people just think of those as children's centres. In actual fact, in many cases, they are much more than that. They're more family centres, and therefore lend themselves to the additional services that can be delivered through them. And they're also more welcoming for families and for people who need help than are the council offices. And that's why they have been successful. In the detail of what's happening, each area of the county will have its own criticisms and concerns about the children's centres happen to be closing in their area. I'm share the view that Mrs. Posnett does, that we're losing the Cove designation, which has been a very successful area in the north of Melton Mowbray, but very pleased we were able to keep the edge, although that was removed in the earlier proposals. What concerns me is in the future, with our pressures on our funding, is that we may have to come at this again and reduce the staff. We've delayed all this now for the time being, and I think that the papers make that clear. That will be much more difficult for us to do, because the moment we'll be able to hold on to the service because we've still got the people there to deliver it, albeit in fewer centres. But it actually, in fact, brings about, done successfully, a reduction in crime, an improvement in the working in the day-to-day circumstances and well-being of many families who don't enjoy much in the way of economic well-being, and it enables a lot of people to live or to develop into having successful lives successful times in later life. If we take it away, we'll slip back to the conditions that existed before it was introduced in the early 2000s, and that would be very, very regrettable. But for today, I'll have to support the paper because it's a necessity to make the savings in the budget.
Thank you, Baron. I've got you, Louise.
Thank you. I support the 0 to 19. I think it's going to improve the service greatly by a much more joined up way of doing things. I would just like to ask the question, looking at the map of where the new family wellbeing service is going to be, there is a gap around the east side, and I just wondered if officers could just explain the rationale behind that, please.
Can you do that, Jane?
Yes, thank you. You'll note from the graphs, the maps that we've set out, that even with our existing children's centre buildings, there's a significant gap around the east. And so even with our full complement of children's centres buildings, we don't have a children's centre in every community. We've run that programme now for 10 years with those buildings, and people access children's centres in a number of ways. Some will walk to children's centres where they've got them in the community. Some people will get taxis, drive, do other things. Some of the most vulnerable families that we support, we bring into centres. So that will be part of our ongoing strategy. That's how we've run our children's centre programme for some time. With the reduction in buildings, we have looked at retaining those buildings that are most easy to access, those buildings that are most used, but actually wouldn't be able to have a full coverage of the county anyway. So our intention would be to continue with the model of enabling families to get to those buildings where they need to. Thank you.
Very good. And the final speaker is young Blake.
Thanks, Leader. Just to remind you, Leader, that I was at the LGA conference too, along with Byron, yourself and Pam, and I concur that the comments made to Rushy about this particular area and preventative investment to save local government money down the line and obviously to offer a really good service to our communities was paramount, and that came across to me loud and clear. I'm going to support the proposal, but I do have a couple of questions because, Jane, you mentioned about the assessment of the buildings currently being used. Byron just spoke about children's centres and being more in some cases than children's centres, being family centres. I have in my particular division a great community centre. It used to be one of our libraries. It's been transferred through Richard's policies into a very successful community hub. But the reason that it's developing into this successful community hub is because it has a plethora of different services, which currently include the family children's services that we're currently talking about. I've been asked by them to look into some of the quality of the appraisal, shall we say, in relation to the consultation. In particular, the assessment criteria by which these centres were assessed for potential redesignation, shall we put. So can I just get an assurance off yourself that the assessments that have taken place have been accurate, have been of a certain quality? There's also been concern about the costs and the money that they stand to lose, which plays a vital part in currently operating this centre. But I understand there is a policy in place through other programmes to offset some of those costs, i.e. give a little bit of help to these community centres to keep running those centres as they currently do. But more importantly, I think the wider concern is people make these centres what they are. If we remove services such as this from those current centres and therefore the foot flow reduces into these centres, what does that do down the line to these centres as a whole? So can you just give me some assurance that there will be other services that might be able to be discharged from the places that we're currently talking about down the line?
Jane?
Yes, thank you. So in relation to the Fleckney Children's Centre, the majority of the use at the Fleckney Centre is through our health colleagues. So a lot of health clinics, drop-ins, but predominantly run by health colleagues. We do run some group work programmes from Fleckney, but in the last year we ran one. So we ran one pathway at Fleckney. So, as I referred to in the paper, we used a number of criteria to assess which buildings we would use going forward, and some of it was around footfall. Fleckney is our second least used building. Notwithstanding that, we know that Fleckney is a well-used building by the community. There are a whole range of activities that are delivered there. So there is, we think, potential to still continue to use that building. We are working with our health colleagues to look at where they may well continue to deliver clinics from. Fleckney may well be one of those places. So that wouldn't then cut down some of that universal footfall. In relation to the monies, there is a pot of money that's been put aside to mitigate the loss of funding to our community libraries through the Children's Centre programme. And Fleckney have been contacted about that, about how they can access that funding going forward. In relation to your comments or questions around the consultation, I can assure you that we did look at all of the consultation responses that came in. What we weren't able to do, because as I noted, there was a huge response that came back, we weren't able to detail them all in the papers that you've got before you. And certainly for Fleckney, I think we've missed out some of the summary in the write-up, but I can absolutely assure you that we took all of the comments into account. And some of those were comments that had come directly to officers, some the comments that came through the process. So we did include all of those comments as part of our assessment. But again, as I said as part of the presentation, is that we did have a very clear set of rationale going forward about which buildings that we would take. So the comments were looked at against those rationale.
Okay, well, we need to vote on this again. Another one brought about by unprecedented financial pressure. So it was moved by Ivan, seconded by Pam. All in favour, please. Thank you, Jane. Moving on to something that's relatively good news as it happens here. In-house fostering fees review. It's on pages 27 to 38 and there's a whole bunch of appendices, 241 to 274. The report advises on the outcome of the consultation undertaken with foster carers on proposed changes to the fostering fees payment scheme. The changes proposed will increase payments and it is important and fitting that the Council continues to recognise and reward foster carers for the valuable contribution they make to the lives of children and young people in Leicestershire. Paul will present and I'll call Ivan, but before I do, again at the LGA, there was questions to the Minister from a Tory leader of a council who also in her normal life happens to be a foster carer. So it was really good to hear her comments, and for the Rishi to recognise the importance of foster carers. It's not only better for the children, it's better for the budgets. So anything we can do to help it. Over to you, Paul.
Yes, I think we've talked on a number of occasions in this meeting and elsewhere about the pressures that have been put on the council by increases in our looked after population. Comparatively, we have a low level compared to other councils, but that level has increased significantly over the last 4 years, and that's created enormous financial pressures on the council. In fact, we estimate in the work that we've done with the MTFS that if we carry on at the rate that we're going to come up to on a par with statistical neighbours, that there'll be £12 million worth of pressure. So you can see the scale of the pressure that we're being put under. As the leader says, I think this is good news. It's part of our Investor Save strategy. To invest in our in-house fostering service to increase it means that we don't have to use independent fostering agencies or residential care. Both of those are hugely more expensive, and if I refer you to the little chart on the top of page 30, you'll see the difference in the comparative costs of us actually purchasing services in the independent sector compared to our own service. So quite simply, by investing around £160,000 a year and increasing our foster carer fees, that will allow us, we believe, to attract a lot more foster carers. We've already been very successful to date, but in order to meet the demand and also to take account of the fact that over the next few years we will be losing foster carers as they age, our target is to increase the number of foster carers by 130. So that's very challenging. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that the fees that we're paying are on a par. These are not the highest levels of fees, but they are on a reasonable footing and on a par with other local authorities. So I'm not going to say any more than that because I think the rest of the detail is in the paper.
Excellent paper. Ivan.
Thank you, Leader, and I would also echo your comment that it's an excellent paper, not least because I've spent quite a bit of time recently with complaints from across the 7 district and borough councils about an issue that we don't have responsibility for, and that is where agreement is given for redesignation of a domestic property to allow children to be kept there. And indeed, I've just dealt with one this lunchtime in the Melton area. It is a fact that over 600 children are fostered in Leicestershire from better funded authorities than we are, compared to the 558 that we've actually got in care. Paul has done, in my view, a very, very good job here with this paper. We've been out to consult on it. It's very clear from the consultation that those people involved in foster caring at the moment welcome the proposals in here. Some cabinet members of longer standing will recall when we had a paper a few years ago about level 6 and level 5, and that would be the answer to expensive external placements. Well, it hasn't proven to be the case. I'm very comfortable with what's proposed in here. I know it's got widespread support amongst existing foster parents, and I would commend a motion on the Green Order paper to Cabinet.
Excellent, Ivan. Byron?
Yes, I'm extremely pleased now that this measure's been brought forward. We have discussed this in my capacity as the member for resources with the director and with others on a number of occasions because of my concern about the escalating costs of looking after children. And of course much of it is because we're having to pay so much to agencies to do the work because we haven't got the in-house capability, and then we look at it, we see actually if we paid our in-house people a little bit more, maybe we can increase the numbers and reduce the agency bills. So that of course is the intention behind the paper, and a lot of work's gone into thinking it through and to getting the fee structure right, and I'm hoping it's going to work, and I have every faith in the officers who've worked it out, so I'm sure it will. So I'll second the motion.
Right, before we vote, it's also not only cheaper, it's actually better for children. So we mustn't lose sight of the fact that you know, it ticks more boxes than just saving money. Foster care is better than residential care, that's for sure. Moved by Ivan, seconded by Byron. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Online commercial strategy and workplace, 2018 to 2022. This is on pages 39 to 44. Not so many appendices this time, 275 to 282. This report provides an update on the Council's current trading activity and seeks approval of a new commercial strategy and work plan. Scrutiny Commission considered this on the 6th of June. They supported the proposed approach. Nev Wilkinson, Head of Commercial Services, is here to present the report, and then Byron will speak. So over to you, Nev.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, briefly, this report updates Cabinet on the activity that's been going on over the last couple of years in our traded services. There's been a lot of pulling of those together where they were disparate before, a lot of work on creating a brand and marketing them, and a lot of focus on sales, which has been very successful. In the last year, we increased the contribution that we were able to make back to the County Council by around £900,000, and we're already well underway in adding to that this year. So really the strategy is looking to build on that successful work that we've done, to embed commercial thinking across the authority, to build in other areas where other services to schools, for example, and highways where they're already trading. How can we share what we've done in Leicestershire Traded Services to help them generate more revenue and contribution back to fill the funding gap, and also to look at alternative delivery models for some of the big areas that are more challenging. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Excellent work, Nev. Over to you, Byron.
Well, it's a success story. Because we've got a whole area of activities where we're particularly good, and instead of just taking a narrow-minded view and providing them just for Leicestershire, we're opening up and providing them elsewhere, and into the commercial sector, and particularly, of course, is the success we've had with our catering services, where we're especially good, and we're finding now that academy schools are, at one time they left us, but now coming back. And we're also taking on new ones who've never had that service from us before. And because we do it so well, we do it cheaper and better than other providers do. And we're building a significant business, all of which contributes, as Neville has said, to our bottom line, as it were, and helps us defray costs of other vital services. So I'm very enthusiastic about this strategy and about pursuing it into the future. So I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Richard Shepherd.
I'll second that, Chairman. Here is clearly an example of one of the ways the Council is moving forward and thinking in a new way. It is a success story, and I hope it'll go on from strength to strength.
Moved and seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Thank you, Nev. On to something else which is innovative, the Children's Innovation Partnership. This is on 45 to 54. This report seeks agreement to the development of a Children's Innovation Partnership and our approval for the Director of Children and Family Services to issue an invitation to tender. As I said, it's innovative and it's groundbreaking. It would see the County Council co-design and co-deliver children's care with a partner organisation. Paul, the Director, is going to introduce it. Then I'll ask Ivan to speak as he's the member with the responsibility. Over to you, Paul.
The lady who's sitting next to me is Liz Perfect, who's our Head of Commission and who's been working with me on this. And if we've got any detailed questions, she'll be able to pick that up. As we talked about earlier, I'm not going to rehearse all the information I said to you about pressures in the looked after system. As we know also, we've struggled even where we want to use the independent sector to actually find placements for some of our children. So on occasions earlier this year, we've actually had to put children into residential care who didn't need to go into residential care because we could not literally find a foster placement. Our in-house service was full, and the independent sector placements, we couldn't find one for them. So that's a double tragedy, both in terms of the additional cost for the council that's taking money from other services, but also for young people that are having to go into settings that they don't need. This is not unique to Leicestershire, it's all over the country. The LGA has identified £600 million worth of pressures this year and £2 billion worth of pressures in children's services over the next 3 years. So we recognise that we can't deliver this all totally on our own, and we do have to work with the independent sector, but we want to work with them in a different way because the present arrangement isn't working as well as it should do. So we could go down for block contracts and things like that, but we don't think that's the best way. Other authorities have done that and they found difficulties with that as well. What we want to do here is to establish a partnership with somebody who's got the skills that we haven't got in-house, but to work with us as a partnership, not just strictly as a contract, but to even help us design some of the services that we're going to actually provide. So the traditional model is you design the service and then you go out and ask someone to provide it. We haven't necessarily got all the skills in-house to do that. So what we want to do here is join up with a partner who can work with us to design those services and help us deliver those services. Also put additional aspects into the service to help us. So even some of our internal services, like we've just been talking about the fostering service, we'd like to bring some more commercial expertise in that. So a partner could do that with us, rather than outsourcing completely the fostering service, which we wouldn't want to do. They may be able to bring some management expertise, commercialism that maybe help us to develop our services even further. So what we're looking at here is to have this partnership working with us jointly on what we call the care placement strategy. So the care placement strategy says if we're going to deal with pressures in the looked after system, we have to look at the whole system, not just elements, right from the point of entering the system to leaving the system, and we need a suite of services that are integrated to stop children coming into the looked after system, but actually when they're in the system, that they're dealt in the most cost-effective way, best for them at the best cost. They then leave the system properly supported. So that's the idea of the care placement strategy, and this is to work with a partner or to identify a partner who could come and work with us. They may even wish to co-invest, actually bring resources to match our resources to deliver some of the things that we want to deliver. It is cutting edge. It is extremely challenging. We are not aware of anybody else in the country that's doing it at this point in time. Clearly, we're going to have to think very carefully about how we're doing it. There is some risks involved in us, but I think the dividends that could pay for the council if this works could be huge.
Thank you. Liz, did you want to say anything before we rename it the Perfect Innovation Partnership? Anything to add, because I know you've done a lot of work on it.
I haven't put my mic on, but I'm usually quite loud anyway. And then as we move into the delivery stage, we anticipate that we will have services that are designed to provide us with the flexibility that we require. So we're not going out for a block contract which fixes into a fixed time. If we know that our pressure is for young people with complex, challenging mental health needs, we can design that service appropriately. And then we move into obviously evaluation. So we will still contract manage and evaluate the partnership as we would with any other contract that we're using.
Thanks, Liz. Microphone off. Seems exciting to me. Ivan, you're going to tell us it is.
Well, actually, it's a continuation of something that Byron set up with the transformation programme. And if you read paragraph 25, you'll see reference there to a number of developments that the department has done, which we are trying to get the most effective use of the resources that we've got available to meet the increasing demand on our services. I think what Cabinet colleagues should be particularly pleased with is the explanation in paragraph 42 about the 3 stages. It's not always that often that you get such a logical progression set out as to how this will take place, and it will mean that scrutiny will be in a very good position in terms of being able to look at this and basically evaluate it. I'm really pleased. I think that Paul has risen to the challenge again, and Liz, I know, does have a strong voice in the best possible way, and I've got no qualms in recommending to Cabinet the motion on the Green Order paper.
That's great. Byron?
Yes, and I have no hesitation in seconding it as well, because as Ivan has said, it complements the earlier paper we had on fostering fees review, which is dealing with one specific aspect of the service. Now this builds on the wider aspects of the service, so we can develop it. And I draw attention to paragraph 25, because it says here it's to develop a number of initiatives to improve outcomes for children and young people, to manage growth, reduce demand and reduce cost. And all of these things are absolutely vital for the future of the service. So I commend the director and the staff sorry, I've got your name. Liz Perfect, isn't it? Yes, sorry. For coming up with this wonderful initiative, and as I say, I second the motion.
Ringing endorsements all around. All in favour, please show. Great, well done, Liz. See you again. Let's move on to 9, supported living in Great Glen, 63 to 68. Seeks approval of the purchase and refurbishment of an existing sheltered housing scheme known as Brookfield Gardens. That's in Great Glen. Please note we've had comments from Dr. Kevin Feltham. These are attached to your order paper, mark 9. His comments don't affect the recommendation in the report, but I undertake that we will provide more information as is requested. John, you're presenting this, and then I'm going to call Richard Blunt. John.
Thank you, Leader. As you've pointed out, the report is to seek approval to purchase and refurbish Brookfield Gardens in Great Glen in order to develop accommodation for 20 disabled adults. Following the refurbishment of Brookfield Gardens, and we would enter into a procurement exercise to identify a housing provider who would manage the accommodation on behalf of the council. The investment in the scheme is aligned to the council's strategic approach to ensure that disabled people can live in the community to maximise their independence, and provides a more cost-effective means of providing care and support for disabled adults. Should the recommendations be approved, the purchase of the property and the procurement of the housing provider will be progressed with immediate effect, with the aim to have tenants moving into the scheme in around about a year's time. In February, the council approved an additional 1% adult social care precept, which was to raise £2.7 million, and that was intended to be directed towards the provision of supported living accommodation. The overall cost of this scheme is £2.5 million, and this would be funded through that additional social care precept. The scheme would also provide £190,000 of revenue savings through reduced social care costs and property income. Thank you.
I think it's a good scheme. I mean, it's nice also to see where the additional money we've had to tax people is actually being spent. Okay, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. And it's nice to get onto this item. This is the virtuous circle I've spoken about before, which is I'm very proud of the work that John is doing. We give independence to individuals. 20 individuals who are presently in an institutional environment whereby their lives are largely constrained by people in charge of them all the time. Some degree of independence might be 10% of their time, maybe 5, maybe 15, whatever it is, whatever they can manage. Not only does that just free up money, it means that we give them that amount of independence, and with independence comes better mental health. So if they can look after themselves, that is primarily, the people part of it is brilliant. Saving money is what this group have to do week in, week out, and we know that, and we've heard today. But by doing this, we are, I think it was £190,000 was the figure you quoted there. I mean, I think you listed 178,176 pounds a week, I think, which equated to nearly 100,000 a year as a saving in cost. So if you can make a saving and give people independence and reuse an existing building that at the moment has no use, to me that's the great. And the final part of it, of course, is to use the social care precept, because as you know, it was important that it got used, because people are going to be taxed an extra 1%, they need to see something for their money, and this is what they're doing. So I'm very happy with recommendations, Chairman. Happy to move.
And I'm happy because I'm seconding it. I mean, as Richard said, save money and provide better lives is what it's all about. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. It's passed. Well done, John. Agenda item 10, Strategy for Leicestershire Adult Learning Service 2018 to 22, pages 69 to 80 and appendices 331 to 3444. This will advise Cabinet on the outcome of the consultation. Nigel's going to present it, and then after Nigel's presented, I'm calling Richard. Nigel.
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, everybody. As you've said, what we're doing here is advising Cabinet on the outcome of the consultation on Leicestershire Adult Learning Services draft strategy and proposing a final strategy which is appended to the report. As you know, Adult Learning Services is an adult and community learning provider that operates across the county and sits within communities and wellbeing within adults and communities. And put simply, it aims just to support people and communities to develop and engage in learning programmes to suit their needs. The details of the draft strategy and the profile of the service were outlined in the Cabinet meeting of the 9th of March and also in paragraphs 20 to 28 of this report. And the strategy sets out how the service proposes to focus its activity to contribute to 4 of the 5 key outcomes identified in the County Council strategic plan, those being a strong economy, wellbeing and opportunity, keeping people safe and great communities, and become more targeted in opening up lifelong learning pathways for those for whom learning in the past might have been a barrier. Following that March Cabinet meeting, engagement with learners and stakeholders was undertaken from 2nd of April to 31st of May this year, and the nature of the engagement is detailed in paragraph 38 of the report. Paragraphs 39 to 45 outline the detail of the responses to the engagement. The main responses came from a range of stakeholders, such as other council departments, our colleagues in public health, and the Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Partnership, and also through a number of learner voice workshops held across the county. But in summary, the outcomes of these indicated broad support for the vision and strategic direction that was proposed in the strategy, the continued importance of working in partnership with a range of organisations to coordinate learning activity, for example, the NHS and social care for wellbeing programmes, that adult learning should reflect community as well as vocational learning, and the need to continue to be innovative in developing a larger online learner offer to ensure that learners can learn from a distance from the traditional classroom. Following the completion of the engagement, a number of amendments have been made and incorporated into what is now proposed to be a final version of the strategy, and these are detailed in paragraph 47 of the report. Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. We can be proud of our LALS service here, but I think we can always do better. And Nigel has been promoted to Assistant Director. I think we are now recruiting for a new Head of Service for LALS. I've got a new Cabinet Support Member, Lee Brecken, and I've given him special responsibility as well. So although we're doing well on LALS, I'd like to put on public record that we aim to do better. Happy to move the recommendations on page 3.
Blake.
Happy to support Richard, lead member, and he's a Cabinet Support Member in the ambition to do better. So happy to support the strategy, and I'll formally second it. Thank you.
Okay, no other speakers. All in favour? Thank you. Well done, Nigel. Community managed libraries, pages 81 to 88. This report updates on the progress made with the implementation of the community managed libraries and the arrangements in place to support their sustainable operation. We're asked to approve a process to be followed should one of the community managed libraries group no longer be able to run the library. You're still doing this, are you, Nigel?
Yes, I am.
Okay, over to you, and then I'll call Rich because it's his responsibility. Nigel.
Thank you. So as you've outlined, we're looking at just updating you on the progress made with community managed libraries, but also just recognising that we do need to have a transparent and robust process should a local group find themselves in a situation where they're no longer able to operate a library. As you know, you'll know the background to this project, and to date you'll know that 31 community libraries have transferred to local, mainly volunteer-led organisations. You'll be aware that each library has a different offer depending on the local need, but all have developed their libraries to become a local hub for their community offering, alongside the traditional book lending services, a range of other activities, such as working in partnerships with local health services to host stroke and disability groups, weekly book groups and story times for young people, and even Tai Chi and yoga groups that meet in the evenings in some of the libraries. The current support from the County Council is outlined in paragraphs 19 to 23 of the report, and this includes, as you know, a tapered financial support package and a range of in-kind support, including the continued provision of the book stock beyond the tapered financial support package, and in-kind contributions from organisations such as Voluntary Action Leicestershire and the Rural Community Council. The Council retains and still retains a small number of officers who maintain a regular link with each local group, and this is intended to continue beyond the tapered support package. However, as we've said, occasionally groups may have to deal with situations that, if left unaddressed, could affect the future sustainability of the library or put its short to medium-term future at risk. This might be, for example, through a shortage of volunteers or financial or building pressures. Paragraphs 25 to 26 of the report outlines what additional support the Council proposes to offer at such a time, and this would include, in broadly, increased liaison with officers and practical support, and being that broker between ourselves and those other organisations, such as Voluntary Action Leicestershire, that can maybe help them find some solutions. Should a time come, though, where a group decides that it cannot continue to operate, paragraphs 28 to 29 propose a clear course of action and it's proposed that that should be followed. The main points of that process should be that we would undertake engagement to encourage any alternative groups to come forward with a delivery plan to operate the library. And should this be successful, then the Director has proposed to have delegated authority through consultation with local members and Cabinet lead who would agree the new arrangements. Should this not be possible, then again, giving the Director of Adults and Communities and the Assistant Chief Executive the power to make arrangements for a public consultation on alternative library provision, which would most likely to be through a mobile library service. The Cabinet would then make the final decision on the future of that service. However, I'm happy to say that at present, the community managed libraries show every sign of continuing to be successful. However, it is prudent, I think, at this point, to have an agreed, robust and transparent process in place in the event of any other situation arising. Thank you.
Yep, I agree with you there. You've done well with this, Rich, so over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Those who have been on the Cabinet with me for a few years know that I'm absolutely passionate about the libraries in Leicestershire, and those who are new, I'm passionate about the libraries in Leicestershire, and that hasn't changed. And this is really an upgrade, a sort of update of where we are. I think the only bit that I think members should note, because it was something that I think it's a little bit about this Cabinet, is what we say is what we do, and we've always stood by it. The bit that I think many members would be interested in is number 27 on page 85. As part of the original support package, a contingency fund of 150,000 was established, to which groups could apply for building maintenance issues. To date, 43,000 has been awarded. In the latest MTFS, a further 100,000 made available. I think that doesn't show our commitment to them. And I think what Nigel said, the fact that they're being used for Tai Chi and everything else, is exactly what we envisaged, that people would make them into community hubs. Nothing is easy, and the volunteers will always find it hard to raise the money, but we're 100% behind them, and I'm happy to move the proposed motion on page 4, Green Order Paper.
Very good, Rich. Louise?
Thank you, Leader. I think I really want to congratulate all the communities and the volunteers who are making these very successful community hubs in their own areas. I am happy that we are still able to support these volunteers going forward, and do recognise that by putting in this mechanism that we have, we're thinking ahead and we can support them through any issues that may arise. So I'm happy to second.
Great. Well, I'm happy as well. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. North and east sections of the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road proposals 89 to 114, appendices 345 to 376. This is an update on the work that has taken place with the delivery of the north and east sections of the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road. Seeks our approval at long last to submit the planning application for these sections. The funding from the Department of Transport Large Local Majors Fund was announced in May. This was a great endorsement of all the work we've done to date on the scheme and means we can take it forward as we had hoped. And can I place on record my personal thanks to Sir Alan Duncan for the work that he did in helping us get this money. The Environment and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered this report on the 28th of June, and a draft minute is attached to the order paper marked 12. Anne, you're going to introduce it, and then I'll ask Blake to speak. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Update on the progress of the work for the Melton and Mowbray Distributor Road. As the leader has already said, and I have an opportunity to reiterate, we were successful in securing £49.5 million from the DFT towards the cost of this £63 million scheme. What the report is seeking is Cabinet's approval to submit a planning application on the scheme. As you'll appreciate, there's significant detail in the report itself, and I would just point out a few key highlights for you. We now have determined the preferred route. This differs slightly from the consultation route, most notably the section between Sculford Road and Melton Spinney Road. Figure 4 of the report highlights that, where the alignment is moved slightly to the north to better accommodate development and also to move the road further away from properties in the north of Melton and from Melton Country Park. Other realignments are primarily at junctions and are shown in figures 3 and 5. This preferred route, therefore, is the basis of the planning application. We are looking to submit that in September to the County Council's Development and Regulatory Board. At the same time, we will commence our discussions with landowners about land acquisition, and in parallel, undertake the compulsory purchase order and side road orders processes. Statutory blight has been triggered by this determination of the preferred route, and the implications of that are set in paragraphs 64 to 68. However, at this time, we consider the risks of blight to be low. In terms of delivery, we'll be using the Midlands Highway Midlands Highways medium schemes framework, struggling with the name of that at the moment. And because we have the facility to do that, it helps us meet the DFT's extremely challenging timetable to get this on site by summer 2020, which is considerable for a scheme of this size. We are undertaking a full environmental statement that considers the impacts and the mitigations of the proposals themselves, and the flavour to the extent of this work is given in paragraphs or pages 105 to 110. Key milestones are set out in paragraph 72, but the only one I'll pick out is completion of the scheme by summer 2022. The recommendations are therefore in the Green Order paper, along with seeking to approve the submission of the planning application. We're seeking delegation to the relevant officers in consultation with lead members for any minor alterations we might need between now and submission of the application, to continue discussions with landowners and undertake those other processes I mentioned, and also finally to authorise the Director of Corporate Resources to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Melton Borough Council on the funding of that local contribution, i.e. the element between the 49.5 million and the 63 million, the estimated total scheme cost. We will bring to Cabinet, of course, future update reports at appropriate times. Thank you.
Blake.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. This is, as everyone knows, a huge scheme. It's a huge opportunity for us. We're really privileged and pleased to be in the position to be looking at delivering this project, but the delivery itself will be a huge challenge. Make no mistake about that. The recommendations, which of course I'll be formally moving, Leader, said it could be a £63.5 million project. Well, actually, work is in progress to try and to see whether we can do the southern bit of the Melton Distributor Road. That in itself will be in excess of £40 million, so we could be looking at a project that's in excess of £100 million. When we started fleshing out the details, submitting the bids to the various grant bodies that the government control, we're looking at about £90 million worth of capital expenditure for the department. we could be looking in the next few years in well in excess of £250 million worth of capital projects that we have to deliver. So the delivery of not only this scheme, but all the other schemes and the priorities that we've signed up to here in Leicestershire will be a challenge, but we're up for that challenge. I won't, as the director's gone through the recommendations, I won't repeat them, I'll just move them on bulk, but we should be extremely proud that we've been given this opportunity to deliver such an important scheme for Leicestershire. I move the recommendations on the Green Order paper, Leader.
Thank you very much. I will now call Byron, who's been campaigning for this road for as long as I've known him.
Well, yes, it's a very long time. Well, this day's come where we're moving it forward significantly with this paper, a very comprehensive paper. Commend the director and her team for putting it together, and I know there's a very able team that's worked on this now for some time, and a lot of people in it because it's such a complex scheme. It's everything that I could ever dreamed of getting. And if we get the southern bit as well, that will finish it off, and I know that's on its way. So I'm absolutely delighted that we're moving forward now, and I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. I've got Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you and I will remember the sudden apparent surprise amount of money that came to Ashby and produced a bypass that transformed Ashby to where it is now. My question actually is that we did the work on the sort of plans through you, Chairman, at a time when I was wondering why we were doing such detailed work on where roads might go without any expectation the money would come. My question is, if because we did the work, did that make it more likely the money came?
Can you answer that, Anne, before we vote?
My answer to that simply is absolutely yes. You know, what the key thing the government is looking for now is certainty of deliverability. Now, if you go from a standing start on a scheme like this, without any information, without any evidence, without any business case, without any design information at all, you will have no chance of delivering it in the timescales that the government have put in, which is tied into, obviously, the current spending rounds. So, absolutely yes. Unless we are in a position and we actually take that risk up front to develop these schemes, when the funding becomes available for whatever reason, we wouldn't be in a position to go for it. So yes, absolutely, we've got to invest up front if we actually want to secure any of this money to deliver the infrastructure.
Yeah, further to what Richard says, I mean, we've been, because of pre-design and good work, we've been successful with 2 HIF bids, and of course under the the NMDR roads, we're now hopefully going to be successful with the A511, which will certainly benefit North West Leicestershire. So I think the answer is yes, where we can plan and afford to put some risk money in, we need to get skin in the game. Okay, moved by Blake, seconded by Byron. All in favour? Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Another roadie one. A5 Strategy and Partnership, pages 115 to 112, appendices 377 to 462. It's about the A5 partnership. As you'll see on the order paper, things have moved on somewhat since the report was published, so Anne's going to update us. Before Anne speaks, can I just mention that comments from County Councillor Maggie Wright are attached to your order paper, Mark 13. So over to you, Anne, then I'll be calling Blake again.
Thank you. Yes, this report updates Cabinet further to a report we brought on this subject in March this year. The main objective of that report was to try and strengthen the position of the A5 partnership and ensure that the draft A5 strategy put us all in as robust a position as possible in order to secure the improvements we need for the A5. However, as the leader has already mentioned, since the time of writing of this report, there has been a further meeting of the A5 partnership on the 29th of June. Therefore, the update is summarised in the Green Order papers. And to just briefly go through that for you, in relation to the draft A5 strategy, which has been revised from the original one that was developed in 2011-2012, the County Council has a desire to ensure that the A5 is set in the wider strategic context. I think it would be fair to say that when the original strategy was written, the A5 was probably our key strategic priority for the strategic road network. However, the world moves on, as we all know, and we have a much wider picture at the moment, and those strategic priorities are set out in both our Leicester and Leicestershire Rail strategy and our perspective for growth. So the County Council's desire was the new A5 strategy fully reflected the wider strategic priorities. At the meeting on the 29th of June, however, while there was much debate on that, the conclusion that was reached would not take us to a position where actually it satisfied our requirement to see that set in that wider strategic context. The other point that we were working with the E5 partnership on was to see a more robust and formal footing for the membership for the members of the group in terms of governance, in terms of reference. Again, proposals were discussed at that most recent meeting. However, there was no decision taken and it was deferred until the next meeting in October this year. On that basis, therefore, the revised recommendations set out for you in the Green Order paper are that Cabinet do not support the draft strategy nor continued participation in the A5 partnership on the basis of the current governance in terms of reference. That the Council ceases participation in the A5 partnership at this point in time. However, that further recommendation that's there that I would stress to you is that we will continue to support the A5 improvements and seek to secure those through the normal channels and with the relevant agencies who are Highways England, who are obviously the Highway Authority for that road, Midlands Connect and the DFT, and we will engage with them directly. Thank you.
Good. Blake?
Leader, I will simply endorse what the Director has just said there. Let's make it absolutely plain that we fully support the improvements to the A5 and will continue to support the improvements for the A5. We're all aware of the bridge strikes and the congestion and the accidents that will require good scrutiny and future investment and work by this council and other councils to improve those aspects of the A5. But I've just spoken about in the previous paper, we have a number of priorities as a county council. We have potentially £100 million road to deliver in Melton. We have other major schemes across the county and across our neighbouring authority areas that we also have to engage with, which is why it's imperative that any body that's set up specifically to look at the A5, that needs to be factored into the wider scheme of priorities here as a county council. And we have a great deal of experience, which has been a question put to the Director about building the evidence basis to deliver schemes. Well, the government have gone from a position of allocating money to where we have to competitively bid for monies to deliver schemes. In order to give ourselves the best chance of doing that and delivering the wider improvements to the A5, we do need to have a formal structure that can not only lobby, which it does very well at the moment, but can actually deliver on our objectives as a collective. So it is with that in mind that I support the Green Order paper and the recommendations on it, and I'll formally move that, Leader.
Good, and I agree with you, Nan, so I'll second it. Ivan?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I've been one of the County Council's representatives on this partnership, and it's been very obvious that although you've got councils turning up, there is no inter-council liaison on planning whatsoever. All the developments along the A5 have taken place within a discrete district or borough council area without reference to how it will impact elsewhere. So that ongoing complaints have been that local lay-bys are being used as toilets because lorries are piling up, they're running out of their time that's allowed when they come up from Felixstowe. People get very upset, and the end result is it doesn't appear to go anywhere at all. And now when you look at the proposals from Nuneaton and Bedworth for the thousands of houses that are being built almost up to the A5, if it needs an upgrade, it's very difficult to see how that will actually be delivered without bringing in compulsory purchase. So I'm personally, although I shall miss being able to tell the southern parishes in my division the latest in terms of the A5, when I reflect on what it's actually achieved, I've got to say it's not very much.
Okay, no other speakers. Moved by Blake, seconded by me. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Environmental strategy, pages 123 to 130, appendices 463 to 510. This seeks our approval for the environmental strategy for 2018 to 2030 and support the associated 3-year action plan. There's been a lot in the news recently about single-use plastics, and this is something I personally feel very strong about. Hence the additional recommendations on your order paper for us to see how we can how the council's use of single-use plastics, we can reduce them as a priority. Environment and Transport overview have considered it on June the 28th. There is a minute attached on the order paper marked 14. Joe Gill, the Assistant Director of Environment and Transport, is here to present the report. And then obviously Blake will speak because he's the lead member. And one of the worst single-use plastics that I personally have eliminated in my house is plastic straws. There is absolutely no need for those damn things. They don't rot down. They get absolutely everywhere. And we should do our best to, as we can here as a county council, actually in this building to eliminate them where we humanly can. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. And just on that last point, we are waiting for government potentially to issue a ban on single-use straws. So they are looking at the whole range of tools on that issue. So we'll be watching that closely. Regarding the purpose of the report, it is to seek Cabinet's approval for the Council's new environment strategy and its supporting live action plan, which it's proposed will replace the existing environment strategy and carbon reduction strategy and ensure that the authority has an up-to-date statement of its priorities and objectives in regard to the environment in the period up to 2030. The report sets out the previous policy positions and decisions that the organisation has taken, some of which I've just mentioned. It also covers the reasons and the need for this review, which, just to sum up some of them, includes the opportunity for us to have a more streamlined set of reporting because there is duplication across those two earlier strategies. It takes account of some of the quite significant changes that have happened, be it internationally, nationally and locally, in terms of environmental legislation since 2011 when we last produced a strategy. It acknowledges the public sector austerity and the challenges that poses for us, but links in with the strategic plan and certainly looks for us to deliver where we have the best opportunity to be effective. And it sets out a route for more effective governance going forward. The report also sets out how the review was carried out, and we're very fortunate that it involved all the departments of the council to show their intent, as well as some key external stakeholders. The key points of the new strategy are listed from points 27 of the report, but just in summary include the scope, the vision, which officers are looking to make some small amendments to make it slightly more concise in response to some comments we had from scrutiny. Aims and objectives and some high-level targets. In summary, it basically covers our legal statutory duties. It sets out where we should be looking to embed environmental sustainability. And the point that the leader made earlier, I think around areas of leadership, we've talked about the issue of single-use plastics and the opportunity to add to the recommendations around bringing forward and prioritising that piece of work. And with that, I would put it to yourselves the recommendations on the Green Order paper.
Thank you, Joe. Blake?
Yeah, this strategy excites me. It's the first time we've been able to bring something like this to Cabinet. We'll all be aware of the work of the current Environment Secretary of State, Michael Gove, and the ambitions he has for the country, which I think should be commended. We should also be looking to take what direction of travel the government are setting us and also build upon that locally. And we've done a huge amount locally already, in my opinion, to demonstrate our credentials and our appetite to have a better environment here in Leicestershire. And what this strategy seems to do is to cut across all of the departments and all of the functions of the County Council, and there'll be a body set up, chaired by our Assistant Director, Joe. Before, we might have the Property Department that has responsibility for catering, and the various other functions of the County Council outside of County Hall. For the first time, we're going to have some oversight over everything that's happening, including our economic development strategy, and see how we can interlink that into our environment strategy. So it's an exciting time. We obviously have statutory metrics to be, that we have to deliver, which are set by government, and we're conscious of that, and some of those metrics have been put into the report. But this is an exciting time for the County Council. We will continue to update the strategy and to try and stretch those targets that we've set ourselves. But on the plastics point, because scrutiny raised this too, I think there's a lot that can be done, not least the plastic straws, but I have a plastic cup in front of me. John Lewis has recently taken a decision to ban from their Waitrose stores all of their coffee cups, make a huge difference to not only what's being disposed through those stores, but I think we can seek to look at doing similar measures here at County Hall. I know that work's underway. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. It's being looked at how we can further support and endorse this strategy, and I really look forward to seeing the conclusion of some of that back office stuff in due course. So I'm fully supportive of the strategy, and I hope the Cabinet are too. I formally move the recommendations, Leader.
Thank you, Blake. Richard Shepherd, that is.
Second that, Chairman, and clearly a good example of ideas being pulled together under one heading for clarity, another example of the Council moving forward, and I'm happy to support it.
No other speakers, all in favour? Thank you, Joe. Thanks for your work. Straight on to more bad news. Ash dieback. This is the action plan. I didn't realise we've got 500,000 and a high proportion of us going to die in the next 5 to 15 years, and it's a shame. Environment and Transport Overview and Scrutiny had a look at this on the 28th of June. Draft minute is attached to the order paper mark 15. You're going to walk us through it, Joe, then I'm going to call Blake because it's his responsibility again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm not even going to try and put a hugely positive spin on this, other than I think that we are well ahead of the curve and we're applying best practice approach to this. The purpose of the report is obviously to advise Cabinet on the Council's approach to managing ash dieback across the county going forward, and to seek approval for the supporting action plan that goes with it. The report, as you say, it sets out what ash dieback is, and I will not get very technical with you, but it's a fungal infection, so it's now airborne. There is no holding it back. It is already here, so we are going to have to manage and deal with it, and it will be arguably quite catastrophic in terms of its impact on a native species, the ash species. We cover when it was first recorded in the UK and Leicestershire back in 2012. It covers the findings of some survey work that we were asked to look into last year in 2017, because you can only do it annually when the trees are in leaf. And it does confirm the presence of the disease across the county. We are seeing it in some of the young plantations and trees. Very little in the mature trees at the moment, but it is present across the county. Point 17 of the report sets out the scale of ash, the number of ash trees in the county, generally in both generally and on land controlled by the county council, or where it has a risk of impacting the highway network. And we also acknowledge that expert and national advice suggests that we need to plan for a loss of up to 90% of those 500,000 trees. Which brings me to the action plan itself. The proposal is for a live document which can evolve over time. It will also be managed by a board which will have cross-departmental support, so countryside services, even people such as trading standards, so we can think about managing people's understanding and communications. It will propose a risk-based approach, which means that we'll look to maintain the highest levels of health and safety for the public whilst looking to minimise the impact on landscape and ecology. Officers have also identified ash dieback as a risk on the corporate risk register, and it is in the MTFS as a future potential financial pressure. And I think all I would add, Chair, is obviously the disease isn't predictable, so we're simply managing it over time. It will evolve. We're not 100% sure when we will see this most significant impact. So officers have sought to devise a plan which allows the Council to proactively manage and prioritise those risks over time, and brings me to the recommendations on the Green Orchard.
They're pretty shocking numbers, really. If you talk of 75 to 90% out of the 500,000 we've got, that means 450,000 trees are going to die. Blake?
Yeah, this is big stuff. Just to say that we're taking what I believe is a pragmatic approach to dealing with this issue. Therefore, I support the motion on the Green Order paper. We had a good scrutiny session about this, and I think everyone's aware of the consequences of this particular disease, not least on the landscape of Leicestershire, which we all enjoy and care about. That is why we're taking a risk-based, pragmatic approach in dealing with this issue. There'll be lots of privately owned property with ash dieback, and it will be incumbent on us to also understand how we can communicate and help those property owners in dealing with this disease as well. I know in previous conversations that one of the concerns we've had is what do we do with the wood and the trees that we might have to take down, and therein lies a potential environmental or commercial opportunity, and that work's being scoped out at the moment to see how we could perhaps benefit or at least deal with the residual impacts of this disease in the best possible way to benefit the County Council and wider Leicestershire. But with that, Leader, I will support the motion on the Green Order paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Louise?
Yeah, it's an incredibly sad state of affairs, but something that we have no control over. So I'm happy to support the action plan that's been put in place, and hopefully we'll manage it to the best of our ability.
Byron?
Yes, I mean, it's one of the saddest papers in many ways because it's so important to our heritage. I mean, the oak and the ash trees have been the bedrock of England. And it's the old rhyme, if the oak be out before the ash, then we shall have a splash. And if the ash be out before the oak, then we shall have a soak. So they're great predictors of the weather. Without them, we won't have that.
Very good, nice poem. Pam?
I just wanted to say, Leader, as with the last item, the environment strategy and the ash dieback, these were both started when I was the holder of the this portfolio. And I'd just like to commend the officers on, I know how much work has gone into both those reports, and they are to be commended for the way that they've handled it and dealt with it. I'd like to congratulate them all on what they've done.
It's really good, Pam, so I'll record that, and if you can pass it on. Oh, sorry, I haven't got you down, Rich. Okay, Rich.
Just one question which isn't in the report is the comms, how we deal with the comms, because not only do we have a legal responsibility for 6,000 odd trees, the general public have got a role to play in the trees that they will own, and also indeed spotting them when they're about to come down, because of course one of the elements is the risk to life of a tree coming down near a road. Part of my business is running forestry, so I'm aware of it, but I should think 99% of the population aren't. I know it's not part of Anne's job, but as a county council, the comms part of it will be important.
Yes, that's a good point. Do you want to have a go at answering, Blake?
I will, because it got raised at scrutiny, and it's a really good point and a valid point. And if you look at Appendix 15 or Item 15 on our Green Order paper, point 4 of the scrutiny decision actually focuses in on that very issue. So it says a comprehensive communications and engagement plan have been developed to support work with private and other public landowners regarding ash dieback. Now, I will defer to our officers if you'd like more detail, but it has been a consideration that's not only been discussed at scrutiny, but also at lead member level as well, because you're quite right. It's so important that we get the comms right in this, and which is why I went out of my way to say that we should be working, and it's incumbent on us to help private landowners understand how best to deal with this issue.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient explanation, is it for you, Richard, or do you want Joe to make a comment?
I think Anne's about to comment.
Oh, were you, Anne? Okay. Over to you, Anne.
No, I would just absolutely echo, yes. One of the actions Blake said is we're developing up a communications plan. You're quite right. You know, there's private landowners, substantial element of these trees will be in private ownership. We happen to know, however, there's 120,000 in private ownership that actually will impact the highway if they come down. So while we'd want to support private ownership, private owners, obviously we have a key interest in making sure they have the right information and are taking the right actions at the right time, because, you know, a key concern to us in the highway network and equally across the rest of our estates, county council estates. We will be providing information and advice about how to look out for symptoms of the disease, and also some advice about when and how they might want to take some action. So you're absolutely right, that's a key part of the action plan.
I think, like Pam said, you've done some good work here. The fact that you even know there's 120,000 that could impact the highway is incredibly good work. Okay, well, anyway, moved by Blake, secondly by Louise. All in favour? Thank you. If you get any further stuff, always bring it back to us. East Midlands Airport Draft Noise Action Plan 2019 to 23. It's a consultation. It's on pages 137 to 144 and appendices 533 to 540. It seeks our approval to the Council's response to the consultation. Lonick is going to be doing it. He's the Head of Planning, Historic and Natural Environment. And then it'll be, well, apparently it's me. Over to you, Lonick.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you're quite right. This is our response to the Noise Action Plan, which the airport have to prepare every 5 years. The main aim of that is to limit and where possible reduce the number of people significantly affected by noise. And you'll see from the report that over the past 5 years there hasn't been a large increase in the noise impact. In fact, it's relatively remained unchanged. Nevertheless, the airport are putting in place some further measures, bring some new ones in, improving the existing ones, because they do have ambitions to grow the airport over the next period. So the recommendation is that overall the measures are reasonable, with a few provisos which are set out in paragraph 33 of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
So I move the motion on the Green Order paper. To be fair, they're a blooming good operator. They are using newer, cleaner, quieter planes, and the only thing we could perhaps encourage them to do is to encourage them to clamp down on the planes that don't route correctly. Now, they know where they're supposed to go, but sometimes they're at the mercy of a type of lazy pilot who just takes a shortcut across the top of Ashby at night, rather than go down past and go across at Shellbrook. I mean, it's the same if they take off going the other way. So they're a good neighbour. We obviously support them because they're growing like topsy up there. But if you could mention routing of taking off and landing, it would be the only comment I'd have. Well, no, they're supposed to go down the side, aren't they, and cut across at Shellbrook, and sometimes they don't. But they are a lot quieter and a lot cleaner than they used to be. So I'll move the motion. I think Blake is going to speak.
I'm just minded, if I drove down the wrong way of a one-way system, I'd be penalised if someone caught me doing that. Maybe there's something in aviation terms, a similar penalty. Yeah, I'm happy to support the motion on the Green... Oh, sorry, formally second the motion on the Green Order paper. Thank you.
You've got another comment, Lonick?
No, just to respond to your comments, one of the measures is to look at those noise preferential routes and try to tighten up on that with better GPS, and also, if they don't do it, more fines. So they have got that in place.
Said that, to be fair to them, they do listen, and they are a good neighbour, and they are big employers for us. So if we can work with them, it's good. Okay, I moved it. Blake seconded. All in favour? Thank you. Okay, section 106, developer contributions, 145 to 150, appendices 541 to 542. Obviously, there's been quite a bit of publicity about section 106 funding that we've had to give back. I actually do thank the Leicester Mercury or the BBC lady, whoever it was who raised it, because I thought it was good to have it raised. So you're going to talk us through it, Blythe, aren't you?
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, as you said, there's a lot of the information is already out there in the media, and this is a response to that, really. One thing I just would say, and it's in the report, that most of these repayments stem back from agreements we entered into way over 10 years ago. And since then, we have been improving the way we do things. Nevertheless, we will continue to do that, and I think the report commits the County Council to do a review, and we'll link that with the Developer Contributions Policy Review and make sure we get better at it in the future. Thank you.
That's coming back in September type time, isn't it, Lonick?
In the autumn, Chairman. Yeah.
In the autumn. I mean, we need to be strict with developers. We need to maximise the public sector gain from them granting planning permission. Now, I know in a way we struggle because we don't sign them up with Section 106, the boroughs and the districts do. But as a matter of principle, we need to extract as much land value gain out of the landowner as we humanly can. And when we do sign them up, let's be more innovative than just signing them up for a few bus passes, which nobody wants. When you look at Ivan, who's short of money and children, and Richard with adults, we should be Section 106 in them for things where we need funding, not for bus passes that people apparently don't particularly want.
Chairman, yes, I think providing it meets the regulations and requirements to mitigate that impact, I think we'll do everything we can to link it to what the impact of that development is.
Super. I'll move it. Blake?
Yeah, just to echo what Lonick's just said, I concur with what you've just said, but unfortunately not every authority in Leicestershire is working to the same set of regulations, so it's very difficult for us to be able to pull that money to use it to the best cause. in terms of highways or whatever other department may seek to use those Section 106 monies. The only other comment I'd make before formally seconding is the articles that I've read in the local press, and I think the BBC and the Leicester Mercury have done a really good job, but I haven't seen the 42 million figure. And what people must understand, and is to put some perspective and context on this, yes, just under 900,000 might have been handed back, but in the last 5 years, over £42 million has been collected and virtually spent. So it represents a small part of the overall picture. I do acknowledge this goes back to 2001, so we're not comparing apples with apples, so to speak, but we're dealing with big money here, and the vast majority of that money gets used for its intended purpose, and I think that should be a credit to the systems that we employ here at the County Council, but we can improve. Thanks.
You've seconded, haven't you? Okay.
Formally second, Leader.
All in favour, please show. Thanks, Ronnie. Corporate Complaints and Compliments Annual Report, 17 to 18, pages 151 to 154, and appendices 543 to 560. It is the Corporate Compliments and Complaints Annual Report, and Simon, welcome. You're going to present it, so over to you, Simon. And by the way, Simon, can I say you do a really, really good job down there? I know it's sometimes difficult, but you really do a good job. I see when I send stuff in, the work that goes into the replies you send, it is very, very good indeed. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. So, really, I just wanted to present to Cabinet some of the positive work that's been undertaken in the complaints area in the 2017-18 annual report, and some of the key achievements. This is largely a positive report, and I just wanted to particularly highlight some of those most significant findings. The most notable one being the significant reduction of adverse findings when complaints have gone to the local government ombudsman. And I'd highlight, despite an increase in volume of cases that they looked at, they found fault in just 8% of those cases that they looked at, and that includes the lowest level of financial remedy payments that they asked the council to make of just £50 since complaints were centralised. So some really good positive assurance that that complaints are being resolved appropriately. That really all comes from just greater maturity and consistency within the system, and a lot of close working with departments has gone into that. And that's really just to say that's a prime area of continuing focus for the year ahead in terms of just increasing the training offer to managers of all facets of complaints handling. And really using that to continue to bring to light some clear case studies of where we've harnessed learning from complaints and developed those service improvements, some of which are touched upon in the report, but over the next 12 months we're doing more work at just bringing to light those case studies that display that good work. I think that's the key messages I wanted to bring from that report.
Byron?
Yes, well, Simon, I can repeat what the leader said. I really do appreciate the good work you do in dealing efficiently with the complaints we receive. Inevitably, as a large organisation, we will receive some. It's gratifying when you're able to resolve them quickly, and particularly turn them round quickly, because complaints which hang on a long time cause even more distress to the people who made them in the first place. So I'm very, very pleased to read the good news in your report, and happy to move the motion on the Green Order paper.
Richard Shepherd.
Chairman, happy to second that, and thank you for your work.
No other speakers. Can we actually say that the Corporate Complaints and Compliments Annual Report be noted and welcomed, because I think it does reflect the good work you do, and it is important that we not only note but welcome it. So are we happy to add the word and welcomed? Yes. All in favour? Yes. Thank you, Simon. Items referred to over scrutiny, there are none. We now move on to the urgent item, which is the proposed East Midlands Strategic Alliance and Unitary Government for Leicestershire. As you know, this has had a lot of publicity this year, so it sets out a proposed timetable for the scrutiny process. I've spoken at length with Simon Galton at the LGA, and I spoke to Terry about it, that's Dr. Einham, sorry, at County Hall. What I want to say, it's very important all members who are able to participate in this debate. And I'd ask Simon and Terry and my scrutiny commissioners that where people might not be on your scrutiny committee, if they've got a view that they want to come to a scrutiny committee and express, that if you can ask the chairman or the commissioners to let them speak. So if somebody has, say, a particular expertise and wants to talk about a health issue, but they're not on the health scrutiny committee, please let them come and speak. Because I don't mind whether they're in favour of the proposal or not. What I want to do is engage with them, particularly county council members. I've had some supportive comments from stakeholders, which is pleasing, and I've spoken with our county MPs. It's true to say some have their concerns, which is entirely understandable, and they've certainly articulated them to me. It's very important that we keep channels of communication open, given the sensitivity of this issue, and to ensure that the process is open and transparent. I very much hope we can create a strategic alliance with our neighbours in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire to boost our economy and create more opportunities for investment. Linked to that, I think we also need to look at creating a new council for Leicestershire, and it is a new model council. It is, some members of the press have accused us of being a county takeover. Well, it is not. It's the abolition of the county council and the districts and the creation of a new model council for Leicestershire. I've also spoken at length to some MPs who may be anxious about our proposals, and I've undertaken with Byron to go to London, because obviously they're not allowed out hardly anymore because of the Brexit stuff and no majority. So me and Byron will be going to London with evidence sometime during the scrutiny process when I can give them a flavour of what emerges from scrutiny. The Chief Executive is going to say a few words and then I shall comment again and then Byron will comment. So, John.
Thank you, Chairman. This report just puts on record for the Council what you informed me since your group met and agreed in principle the Council should develop proposals for a unitary structure for Leicestershire. The two recommendations are to authorise officers to start work on those proposals in the context of a strategic alliance for the East Midlands and how a unitary structure would facilitate that. The second part of the recommendation is to put a timetable in front of the Cabinet. There's a detailed timetable in the recommendation except for dates for meetings of individual scrutiny committees which need to be added.
I will move the motion, and also I don't want to be constantly making comments on this now. We've got a settled view that it's going to go to scrutiny. Members of Parliament, I don't think, will want to comment anymore, and I don't particularly want to comment. People know my views. I now want to hear the views of scrutiny. I want to hear the views of pro-vice chancellors. I want to hear the views of the LEP. I want to hear the views of the health industry, so to speak. So this is where we are. This is what I would like to do. No more comments. Let it go through scrutiny. Let everybody engage and hopefully get some more emails from members of the public. Now, I have had some, obviously, because they're sending to me personally. They're on side with me. But all emails should feed into the process because it's what people want that is more important if we're going to deliver the best quality services to people for the lowest possible price. So I'll move the motion on the order paper, and now I'll call Byron.
Yes, I'm happy to second. And of course, although there'll be this debate and people will are invited to contribute, and that's the right thing to do, we will have to have a programme of information providing as well, an explanation, because a number of people have been to me and they start to ask very challenging questions. How will this particular aspect work? How will that aspect work? Why will that work better than now? And why are you putting it forward? That sort of thing. So I agree we need to be able to answer that. And of course, by passing the motion, we're authorising the officers to do the further development, which will assist us in that task. So I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Byron. Richard Shepherd.
Ozon.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Could I just echo your remarks about the importance of this as being the start of a debate? and also echo your request to Scrutiny Commission leaders that members are welcome to make submissions to scrutiny committees so that all may take part in the discussion over the next few months. Thank you.
And in particular, people who are type of caught between two stools, which are the Cabinet support members, Mo Sadat has emailed them about how they can actively contribute to the process. So moved by me, seconded by Byron. All in favour, we get started. Thank you. Thank you very much. Number 21, exclusion of press and public. I've got to read it out. I move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 10 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. All in favour, please show. Thank you. So we'll just pause for people who are gentlemen of the press to go.